Hey, welcome to the Engage for More podcast. You are joining episode number 127, and today we're talking about the resume of a leader.
Yes.
Good stuff.
That is good stuff.
So my name is Pam Pegram, and I'm hanging out with my friends.
I'm Kim Ball.
And I'm Gwen Neal.
Yeah. So we touched on our last podcast. If you didn't get a chance to listen to last week's podcast, please go back and listen to a great opportunity that you have to be part of a groundbreaking leadership course that Pam is leading, starting in March, the end of March, right?
Middle of March.
Middle of March, right. So you still have time to join. But we talked a lot about leadership in this prior podcast, so go back and listen to that. But one of the things I think that we've said over and over on this podcast, and you've said too, is that some of us thinks that leadership is just for those who are in a corporate role or maybe on staff at a church, but it doesn't apply to everybody. But leadership applies to everyone. If you are a Christian woman, then you are called to lead.
Yeah.
You're called to lead others to Christ. Go therefore and make disciples. You're supposed to be leading people to Christ. And some of us just don't think, oh, well, it's not for me because I'm too much of an introvert. Or I don't have any qualities that make me a leader. So we wanted to do this podcast.
Yes.
So that you could know that you're not exempt from this calling.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And really, for me, as I was going through this, is because we've said this before when we've talked about leadership on this podcast, because it is something that you're passionate about, and obviously we are too, because we are leaders at our churches and our community, and but this word in my heart is servant leadership.
Yes.
Yes.
We're called to as Christians. Lead as Jesus did.
That's
then we
right.
see him do a different kind of leadership called servant leadership. And what is that? You may have heard what servant leadership is, but I love a commentary that I was reading. Going along with Matthew was talking about the servant leader themselves is a growing leader led and grown by the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
Ooh, I love that.
I love that
good.
too.
Yeah.
You can't lead like Jesus and not be a servant leader.
That's
It's
right.
If you're not a servant leader, then you are not leading like Jesus, because in there's kind of an inverted triangle for a Christian. The worldly triangle has the leader at the top.
Yeah.
Here are the people on up to the top, and the leaders at the top, and they expect to be served, right? But as a believer, it's kind of inverted, where the leader's at the bottom.
Right.
And the leader's the one who serves the most.
Right.
They show up first. They leave last. They pour into their people. They serve in a way that is loving and caring and trustworthy, with credibility, all of those things, right? And so it looks totally different
It does.
than for someone who is not a believer.
Right.
Yeah, Matthew 20 speaks to that in verse
Yes.
25, or maybe it's 26. It says, you will lead by a completely different model.
Yes.
The greatest among you will live as the one who is called to serve others, because the greatest honor and authority is reserved for the one with the heart of a servant. For even the Son of Man did not come expecting to be served, but to serve and give his life in exchange for the salvation of many.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Servant leadership is more about being with him than
Yes.
about doing.
Right.
It's about being with him to learn about his character and who he is and what he did for many, than about all that you can do for him. And I think that just breaks against what we know, because we think that, we have to lead this Bible study. They've asked us to do that and be a greeter, and we need to work down in the nursery, and we need to do all these things. Those are all good things.
Yeah.
But what has God called you to do in your servant leadership?
Well, and we are to do.
Yeah, we
So
are.
let's be really careful about that, because some of you will grab that and go, see, I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is my Bible study.
Right.
But yet in the Bible, there are so many action words. And so Kim and I were talking earlier, and she said repeatedly, it's really about the posture of your heart.
Yes.
And it really is. And so we're to do what God is asking us to do, and so we have to think through that.
Right.
So we all do things. We have to, right? We have to go about our life and do things, but how we do them.
Right.
Are we pointing other people to Jesus? Are we leading them? I mean, it's really simple. If you just want to break it back down and make it super simple, is we're to follow Jesus and we're to lead other people to Him. Follow Jesus and lead other people to Him. So the way that we're following Him should cause other people to follow us, right? Right into a relationship with Jesus.
Right.
And so I love that. I love that. It's not doing it in our own strength. It's not striving.
Yes.
All the things the world tells us. You got to hustle, girl. You got to hustle. No, you really don't.
That's right.
You really don't. You know.
It calls for us to be one of the characteristics of a successful leader that has an aura of godliness about her is she's faithful and obedient.
Yes.
And those go hand in hand, and we see that's on Jesus' resume as well.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about the resume of a godly leader, two of those characteristics, the skill requirements are going to be, I'm going to have to be faithful and I'm going to have to be obedient. Even if I'm at the top of the pyramid or the triangle, I still have the heart and the disposition of a servant leader. And then I'm obedient to the policies and procedures that are in place for my company, corporation, my school, my business, the church, and to the Word of God.
Yes.
And you will get these principles if you participate in the roundtable with Pam that starts the middle of this month, but also faithfulness.
Yes.
So you're not only faithful to God, but because you are faithful to God, you show up, that faithfulness shows up in your acts of service to your job.
Yes.
To your career, to the people you serve. And so those are just two characteristics that really stand out for me about what's on my resume as a leader. Well, leaders lead. The shepherd who guides the sheep through the pastures or pasture, he's at the front leading the sheep. But before he ever goes to the front to lead them, he lets them in through the gate.
Yeah.
So we pass through and we know who's serving us or who's on our team as leaders. We know that we have 6 women, 7 men. We know them. We know their spouse. We know some of their likes, some of those things that make them tick. If they're motivated by intrinsic rewards as opposed to extrinsic rewards.
Yes.
How do we know this? Because we're there at the door ushering them in. And just like we as the sheep know our shepherd's voice, our individuals that fall in line under us should know our voice. They should know our heart, and that our heart is about serving them. And it makes it easier for them to do that. And then another, we accept and we delegate responsibility.
So good.
And I want to say it was Pam in last week's podcast talked about accepting responsibility. And then I looked to Moses on this because he had so many people he was responsible for leading. And it was his father-in-law, Jethro, that stepped in and said, hey, dude, look, you need to divide these people up and get you some helpers. And so as a leader, we have to accept the premise that we cannot do it all.
Right.
And we surround ourselves with those who can do and who excel in areas that we're not good in.
Yeah.
Because we're not the bees all.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love that you brought up the shepherd, because, Jesus is the good shepherd, right? That's what he called himself, and we're to lead like Jesus. And so we are to be a good shepherd.
Yes.
A good steward of the people that God has put into our sphere of influence, whether we have a title or not, right? Then we're supposed to be leading these people. And when you think about what the shepherd does, what are some things that the shepherd does? Like he nurtures. You know, he's takes care, right? He cares and leads in the right direction. He doesn't run off and leave the sheep, right? He stays with them. Just so many things that the shepherd does, you know, to take care of his sheep, his flock, his group, really thinking through, you know, the shepherd couldn't just do what he wanted to do or just focus on, this is what's best for me. I need a break. I need a break. I'm going to leave these sheep for a minute. You know, he couldn't do that, you know, or it would go south really quickly, right? And so also when you read and study about that and you know, even when you're reading Psalms 23 and the sheep lay down. You know, the only way they will ever do that is because they trust their shepherd and they know that their shepherd is there taking care of them. He's protecting them. Nothing bad's going to happen to them. And so we have to go, okay, am I a trustworthy leader? Do my people trust me? Do they know me? And can they have peace? Because I'm their leader. You know?
I think in that same token, the difference between leadership in a secular way and Christian leadership is that we don't do it all on our own. It is really a partnership with God. Can you imagine being in partnership with Him? That's exactly what Christian leadership is. That He does, you know, we're obedient, right? And then He does what we cannot do. Or on our own. And leading. Because I'm the poster child for that. Because there's no reason that I should be leading except that God's called me and He's given me everything. And so we do our part in obedience, like you said, and being faithful to what He's called us to. But then God does only what He can do. That's a partnership. You're not in it on your own. It's not you against the world. It is you with God for a purpose.
And
that's a huge shift than what you see in the secular leadership world.
That's absolutely right. I love that you brought up that it's a partnership with God. He's the real CEO.
That's right. For sure.
And so
we're to fulfill His job description, right?
Absolutely.
So that was
for His glory and not ours. And that's another thing in the secular that's different from the secular world and leadership is that it's all, you know, and not always, but a lot of the time it ends up being, you know, it's all lifting me up. But instead, in the Christian realm, it's about God. For His glory and lifting Him up.
You know what's super cool is that you can work in a secular place and just teach biblical principles. You don't even have to say the word Jesus.
That's right.
If it's not allowed where you work or if you're afraid you're going to offend somebody, you can simply study God's word and teach biblical principles. You know, you can study Proverbs and you know, grow in your wisdom and teach your people at work to be wise and why, you know, and it impacts, it enriches their life in such a way. They don't really know what's happening. They don't really understand that it's biblical principles, but they do recognize quickly that you're different. You are not like everybody else. You are trustworthy. You do have credibility. You are a good and kind and caring person. Like they see things about you, attributes. It's really like attributes of God, right? Because you have a relationship with Him, but they may not even realize that. They are just attracted to you because of that. And that might lead them to want to know, now, why do you have peace? We're all stressed out. Why are you over there with peace that passes all understanding?
For sure.
And they may even start asking you questions, you know, where you can at some point share Jesus with them. But just teaching biblical principles will enrich their life in a way that they can't even imagine.
I agree.
And I love it. Kim brought this out about we lead differently, and leaders seek God's direction. And that's brought home to us in Psalms 32:8, where He says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. So what that means is, even though we may serve in a position of a servant leader, God is our CEO. So we go to him when there's a problem. It's tax season with our taxes, and we don't have all of our documentation for our receipts or whatever it is, or it's the economy is wishy-washy now, so we're needing more employees. What makes the difference in you submitting your taxes on time and not being audited? What makes the difference in you having a full staff when everyone else is suffering to keep employees is because you go to him and he instructs you on the way that you should go. In First Chronicles, we seek the Lord in his strength. We seek his presence continuously. And so that's what godly leaders do. And by recognizing, okay, I fall in under authority as well.
Yes.
I've got to answer to someone, and not accepting all the responsibility. We do, as Kim taught us 2 years ago, we're doing some hurling here.
That's right. Giving it back to him.
All of our leadership responsibilities, our cares, the things that we're responsible for, we share them with him, and then we wait with expectation for him to give us divine insight on how to solve these issues.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in turn, I mean, we've mentioned this before in your pyramid, like, it's not that you are on top necessarily, but you're given the chance in the servant leadership to walk alongside. And for me, that's very personal.
Yes.
Because when God called me into women's ministry, I had the Moses moment. It wasn't, I'm slow to speak.
Yes,
it was like,
we all
who am
do.
I?
Yes.
Who am I,
Very
Lord?
correct.
And he just told me, walk alongside these women. And I can do that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I could do that. Like, in all of my brokenness, I could lead them through what God had me going through, and I'm still just walking alongside. And some of us don't feel like that, we're in the elevated position of leadership. That's not what servant leadership or Christian leadership necessipally is always all about. Now, a lot of cases it is. We have a head pastor, or we have people listening here might be the head of a CEO of a company. But that is, I think, a distinct characteristic is that we walk alongside the people that God's called us to lead.
Yeah.
Yes.
We empathize with them. We hear them. We listen to them. We love them. We do all the things that Jesus did. He walked alongside his disciples.
That's right.
He walked with them. He poured into them. He gained their trust. And that is a distinct difference.
Yes.
And for me, in my psyche, it's a more attainable. Like, I can walk alongside some people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can do that.
And as you shared that list, there's one more thing that he did. And that is he reproved, or he disciplined, or he called.
Right.
He said the hard stuff. And that's part of being a servant leader. We can't just sit there and go, she's about to mess up. She's gonna, as a leader, we are in love, right? To rise up and to have those hard conversations. Right. And it says in Proverbs 3:12, it says that for the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father, the son in whom he delights. And so just like as a parent, we have to tell our kids when they're doing wrong, and there are consequences. We don't have that same, like, I'm going to ground you a level of authority over, but we do have the responsibility to address hard
and what
issues.
Was that scripture again?
Proverbs 3:12.
Okay. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And so that's just part of being a Christ-centered leader. Like, Jesus didn't overlook things, and he would have the conversations, but he did it in a way that they could receive what he had to say. Yeah. And because they knew that he loved them. And when you're leading people and they know that you have their back, that you have their interests, their best interests at heart, that you love them and care about them, then they listen. they hear you, when you have those conversations. So it's so important that we do that. That's part of being the good shepherd.
That's right.
Too.
And listen, y'all, if y'all don't sign up for this round table with Pam, you are missing out, because she is just pouring in nuggets, dropping them left and right this morning. That's so very powerful. As you were speaking it, I remember constantly telling my teachers, even when I was a professor at Arkansas State, to get the parents on your side, all you have to do is let them know how much you love their children.
That's right.
They buy into you loving their child, you're going to have no problems out of them or their student.
That's so good. That is really good.
And it's the same concept. If our employees know that we love them and we have their best interests at heart, they will listen and receive correction.
Yes. And so wherever you're leading, maybe you are just sitting on a volunteer committee.
Yeah.
And you're to lead these people. It doesn't really matter where you're serving, whether you're a manager, maybe you're a supervisor on a work line, of a furniture factory or something. Wherever you're working, wherever you're serving, even if you're a stay-at-home mom, there are people following you.
That's right.
And
there's always people looking, even when you don't know.
Yes. And you have more impact. You can speak more deeply into their life. You can make a bigger difference if they first know that you love them, that you care about them. I mean, really, if you can just love people, you can lead.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, if you'll just choose to love. And you know what? If you're a believer, that's really not an option. Somebody once said, I just don't like people. I'm like, well, we got to deal with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to work on that.
That's right.
You don't get that option.
No, you don't.
So as a believer, we have to be obedient children. And so part of that is to rise up and lead the way that Jesus led. And I think sometimes we just need to ask ourselves, if he were doing what I'm doing, if he were serving on this committee today, what would he say? How would he respond to what that person just said? How would he handle this hard situation? And that's a good question to ask ourselves constantly, right? Constantly. So if you don't know about the Leadership Roundtable, let me just tell you about that very quickly. It is happening. We don't know. I'm recording this podcast ahead of time. I'm not sure if it's full or not, but hop over to engagewithpam.com and see if you can grab a seat. It's only $60 for a 60-day intensive where we're just going to focus on leadership just one time a week via Zoom. If you can join, it will really be to your advantage if you can join live on the Zooms. If not, you can watch the playback, no problem. Still have an opportunity to receive everything via email and offer some feedback to that. I promise you that you will receive more than $60 in value, I promise. So don't worry about that investment. That is a really good investment in yourself, and you'll be able to use so many things in so many different areas of your life. But if the spots are full, there will be a place there for you to get on an email list so that you know more information about the course, when it's coming out, all of those things.
Now, when you opened it a couple of weeks ago, how many spots were you
There's only
opening?
60.
What's your max? Okay.
60 is the max. Yes. 60 is the max.
It's filling up fast.
Yes.
So if you're hearing this, make sure you bounce on over to engagewithpam.com and register today. So excited and expectant about what God is going to do through Pam.
Yeah. Through all of us. Through all of us. Iron sharpens iron.
That's right. That's right. And we do learn so much about leadership from you. And so thank you for your passion, because it's contagious. It is contagious for leadership. So
thank you.
We thank you so much for joining us today and what the role of a servant leader is, or a leadership. What does it look like to be a leader? If you have any more questions, we just love for you to hop on over to engageformore.com. Contact us. If you just feel like you need some leadership in your spiritual development, there's some questions that you have. We have the circle that's part of our 2 times a month, bi-monthly, we meet, and we would love to have you be a part of that. If that's something you're interested in as well, just go to learn more about the circle on engageformore.com. Thanks for joining us.